quick, good example. I know I'm going off on this tangent, but it's a vital tangent to go off on. Swans, man. I'm not here to talk negative about swans. There's good things you could get from swans. But I used to get the swan's egg rolls. And if you can see here, if you're up close, here's the ingredient list for swan's egg rolls. I don't know how many there are because I tried to count them the other day and it got real blurry and I just lost track. I couldn't even count them all. There's over 100 ingredients here. I don't know how to pronounce half of them. I don't know what half of them are. That's what I'm talking about. 65% of what's going in your mouth is a processed food-like substance. That's it right there. And it's not just that egg roll, it's everything we're eating. And they took the fat out of everything because of the great deception that fat's bad. Fat is not bad. Thank you, Rick. Fat's awesome. You need fat. And I would argue 50% of what you put in your mouth should be a healthy fat. The problem is bad fat. That's a whole other lecture we'll get into. But the point is when they take the fat out, which they have, then there's no taste. Everything will taste like this cardboard when you take the fat out. So what do? They got to put this sweetener and this artificial this and this flavoring and MSG, all these flavor enhancers, so you'll eat it. Anyways, don't get me started. The point is, back to wheat belly. God food versus man food. I tell people, eat God food, and they say, well, Jesus broke bread, he ate wheat. No, here's the difference. He ate the ancient wheat, and I don't mind if you eat the ancient wheat, but good luck finding it. You can, but you have to really hunt for it. The wheat was changed. In 1970, Dr. Norman Borlaug, they talk about it in Wheat Belly, PhD, changed, genetically hybridized, changed the wheat in 1970. And he won the Nobel Prize. Why did he win the Nobel Prize? Because ancient wheat was 4 foot, 5 foot tall wheat, einkorn wheat we call it. It was hard to harvest that thing. Plus the yield wasn't very good. This new hybridized wheat that Borlaug came up with, dwarf wheat, 18 inches tall, yields 10 times greater. Wind resistant, drought resistant, everything resistant. So you can mass produce wheat. He cured world hunger. Nobel Prize. We didn't know it then, but we know it now. He solved one problem, created another: world obesity, chronic inflammatory disease, diabetes, all the things we suffer from. 2 pieces of whole wheat bread on the back of this book. Who in the world in America wouldn't think that's healthy? The base of that food pyramid says 8 to 10 grains and cereals a day. I throw that entire base off. Literally, no grains for a lot of my patients. But 2 pieces of whole wheat bread, of course, that's healthy, right? Everybody says, yeah. No, it's not. Because those 2 pieces of whole wheat bread, because of the way the wheat was changed, more amylopectin A, which is a starch. There's a high content of amylopectin A in this new wheat. Amylopectin A gets broken down by your saliva, the amylase in your saliva. Within 4 seconds, it's blood sugar. It's raising your blood sugar. 2 pieces of whole wheat bread will raise your blood sugar faster or as fast as a can of soda. The glycemic index, just Google this tonight. Glycemic index, that's a measure of how quickly your blood sugar will rise after you eat something. You know, like the old sports car commercials, 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. Well, how quick are you going to raise this blood sugar? Whole wheat bread, the glycemic rise on that is faster than table sugar. It's craziness. No one understands this unless you read these books and talk to these kind of doctors. And we'll talk in a minute what's so bad about the sugar rising so fast, but that messes everything up. Hormonally, digestive, that's what we're talking about here. It shuts down the parietal cell. Okay, so back to my teaching. Sorry about the tangent. But those are the 2 biggies, sugar and stress. So now we've shut down the parietal cell, so our hydrochloric acid production goes down. So your pH isn't 1 to 2 now, it's more like 4, 5, 6 maybe. Okay, so what's that going to do? Logically, you're not going to digest your food well. You're not going to kill germs well, the 2 jobs of hydrochloric acid. So you get overgrowth of some of these microbes I was telling you about, all the bacteria and fungus and mold that's on every bite of food you eat. You get overgrowth of those guys here and further down in your intestine. It's called small intestine bacterial overgrowth. What does that do? These guys ferment. They start working on the undigested food. They ferment that food. Fermentation byproduct is gas production. So you're making all this gas and you make an acid byproduct. So this stomach's just bloating and ballooning up, just like a balloon. Plus, if you're overgrown down here full of these bacteria, same thing, gas, build up, build up, build up. Just the pressure gradient there of that intra-abdominal pressure going up and up and up pops that valve open, because that's just a pressure deal. That valve is squeezed by muscles around it, and if it's overcome by a bigger squeeze, a bigger pressure from down below, it's going to open up, and it does. That's one mechanism. Number two, there's a valve down here at the bottom of the stomach. The trigger for it to open up, you got stomach chyme, that's your, after you digest your food, that soup just sitting there. One of the triggers for that valve to open is stomach chyme pH of 2.5 or less, triggers that valve to open and release your stomach contents out. So if your pH is sitting up here at 4, 5, or 6, you're getting delayed gastric emptying. That valve's not fully opening like it should. All this builds up, builds up, builds up. Same thing. You build up, get distension of that stomach, that valve opens. This is more of a theory I haven't seen proven, but I'm sure it will be soon. Hydrochloric acid receptors at the top of the stomach. Receptors are like a keyhole for the key, hydrochloric acid. If you have enough stomach acid floating around in here, all those receptors get filled up with stomach acid. When that happens, it sends a signal to that muscle to squeeze. If you don't have enough acid, those receptors are empty, that muscle's not squeezing hard, it's flapping in the wind. So that gentleman I told you about, that over 6 years I had him up to triple therapy morning and night, and in 30 days he was on none and symptom-free. It's because we killed the bugs that were overgrowing, and then we gave him more stomach acid. The exact opposite thing that I'd done for 6 years. The top 100 list of drugs sold in America came out a few weeks ago. I was looking at it. Top 10 is really interesting. But number 2 on the list, Nexium. That's the big acid reducer, the purple pill. $6.3 billion with a B in 1 year. We're spending $6.3 billion to shut this all the way down. Totally reversible. 100% totally easily reversible. And I'm not saying easy like I figured this out. This was figured out way before me. I'm just barely learning this stuff. But I'm saying that's pretty darn easy. Like these health food store guys can get you over this pretty much if you'll do what they say half the time. That's walk in the park stuff. Cancer's hard. Autoimmune disease is hard. Reflux is not typically that hard. These are pretty easy things to figure out. But I didn't learn it in med school, and obviously no other doctor did either, because we spent $6.3 billion on Nexium. Anyways, this is one vital thing that you need to understand, because here's the overarching theme at my clinic now is teach you how to give your body what it needs. What did the designer, the creator of you, intend for your body to have? Well, one thing he intended us to have is stomach acid. But overarching theme is figure out what does your body need that's lacking? Let's give it back. What are you being exposed to that the Lord never intended you to be exposed to? Get it out. That's it. That's what we do. Figure out what you're missing, give it back, figure out what you have that you don't, like wheat that turns into sugar that quick, that's man wheat, not God wheat. Get it out and see what happens. It's amazing what happens. But real quick, one more thing I want to put on here, or explain here with this stomach acid. Further down in your digestive system, you've got your gallbladder sitting here, your pancreas sitting over here. These are organs that, gallbladder just stores the bile and then squirts it out when it's told to. And the pancreas too will squirt digestive enzymes out. Now these guys aren't constantly just leaking out some digestive juices all day long. They're triggered. They're signaled to do it. So one of the main signals for these guys to release their juices is stomach contents passing by with a pH less than 2.5. You have to have an acidic stomach contents passing by to trigger that gallbladder to squirt bile, to trigger that pancreas to squirt out what it needs to squirt out. So all these guys and gals getting their gallbladders yanked out because they're full of sludge and stones, it's all oftentimes because of not enough stomach acid. You've got to have that to make that squirt. So if that gallbladder is just sitting there full of bile and it's not squirting, it's real sluggishly squirting because you don't have enough acid, then that bile gets concentrated. The more concentrated it gets, it turns into sludge. And they'll see this when they do a sonogram of your gallbladder because you have belly pain. It'll say sludge in the gallbladder. And then it gets more and more concentrated, stones, gallstones. There's a reason for all this, and that's a big one right there. Same thing with your pancreas. So if you're not making this, you're not digesting your food, you're not getting your gallbladder pancreatic enzymes to digest your food. So now you've got undigested food particles floating down in your gut, and you're not getting the nutrients out of them. In particular, B12, magnesium, iron, and there's more, but those are big ones. These guys cannot be absorbed well without an acidic stomach content. I have people taking magnesium because they think they're low in mag, and they are, because everybody is pretty much. And they're taking all this mag and they're not getting better. Well, they have no stomach acid. Their pH is a 5. That mag is going right through them. They're not absorbing it. You've got to have stomach acid to absorb a lot of these things. So this all works together. There's probiotics, which we'll talk about next, further down here. One of these groups of probiotics, those are the good bacteria. It's called acidophilus. Maybe you've heard of this. You take an antibiotic, you should take a probiotic, because your antibiotics kill your good guys too. Acidophilus is a good guy. What's acidophilus? The Latin for that, acid-loving. These good guys need the stomach acid to survive. So stomach acid is huge. It's a very important thing. Let me see, this might erase. That's one thing I would highly encourage y'all to understand, read about. Here's my eraser right there. Especially if you have a family member, loved one with osteoporosis. They don't have minerals. Most likely they don't have stomach acid, is one of the reasons we don't have minerals. But definitely, anybody with reflux, heartburn, indigestion, get them to read that book by Jonathan Wright, Why Stomach Acid is Good for You. Real quick, I want to move on to what I consider probably the most important topic tonight that we will go over. Hippocrates said, all disease starts in the gut. That was a long time ago when he said that, but it's true. And science today is proving, literally every week, every month, I'm reading more and more. The science is coming out showing how this is true. And here's a brief summary. This is your intestine. Your intestine should be lined with probiotics. I mentioned a while ago, probiotics are the good bacteria. A year and a half ago, I was quoting 400 different species of probiotics. Then I bumped it up to 1,000 because new research came out. Now, just the other day, 10,000 I read. 10,000 different species, different kinds of bacteria in your gut. Of each kind, there's billions, so altogether trillions. Trillions of these good guys in your gut. Where do you get them from? Mom. The vaginal birth canal. When you pass through mom's vaginal birth canal, you pick them up. Second, breastfeeding. Off the nipple, you get more. C-section babies, they don't have it. Or they don't have the right ones. They've studied C-section babies, probiotics. They have skin flora, mama's skin flora from coming out of the skin. And bottle-fed babies also diminished in the probiotics. And it's been well documented, bottle-fed babies and C-section babies are sicker babies. They have more ear infections, more asthma, allergies, other things. But anyways, there's a link with that in your probiotics. That's where we get them. How we maintain them is eat real food, or God food, I call it. And I already went into that a little bit. Processed food-like substances is what we're eating, but we need to be eating real food. And then some fermented food occasionally. No one even knows what fermented food is anymore because no one's doing it, because we don't have to. We have refrigerators, but it's how we used to preserve food, like sauerkraut is a fermented food, kimchi, kefir. That's where you let the natural bacteria that are on these vegetables just grow in the right environment. They'll grow a lot, and they're beneficial to you. They're good bacteria. And no one's really doing that anymore either. So a lot of people are missing this these days, C-sections, bottle-fed, and a lot of people, even if they were vaginal and breast, a lot of them aren't getting it there. Almost every patient I see, especially the really sick ones, and I keep saying the really sick ones, they end up seeing us by like last resort. They've tried everything, been everywhere, done everything. Well, let's go see if Dr. Edwards can do anything. And then, believe me, it's not because I'm smarter than anybody else. I'm not. Very middle of the road in my medical school class. I think that's to my advantage, because when you sometimes too smart, it's not for your own good. Or arrogance. Arrogance is bred into us. in med school. And of course, you get into the real world, you're the doctor, especially in a small town. I mean, they put you up there on that pedestal. And so there's this pride about us. And you've got to turn that off. And you've got to turn off your way of thinking to really go here as a doctor. But anyways, I'm going off on a tangent again. This, vaginal birth and breastfed, even if you were that, we kill these guys off with antibiotics. That's where I was going with it. These patients that come see us, we go back to your birth history. We'll ask you if you're vaginal or C-section, bottle or breastfed, all this stuff about your mom, because we want to know. How did you come out? Or did you have 2 strikes against you coming out? And almost every patient we see, they were on, if they were really sick, C-section, tons of C-section, but the biggest thing is antibiotics. Yes, doc, my mom said I was in the hospital for 2 weeks as a baby. Then I had all these ear infections, then I had strep throat, then I had sinus infections. I always was getting a shot. I had acne as a teenager. I was put on tetracycline for a whole year. I have a sinus infection every fall and spring. I get an antibiotic. All this antibiotic exposure all the time. So what does that do? It kills the probiotic. It doesn't differentiate. It's a bug killer. It kills them. However, I thought I was okay because I only had 1 round of antibiotic that I could recall in my adult life. Pneumonia in med school, I had pneumonia. Antibiotic, no problem. And I haven't had any since, and none really before, except when I was a little kid. And then I read about how 70 to 80% of the antibiotics made in America, they aren't given out by your doctor or your pharmacist. They're in the meat and the milk and the chicken. They're put into these animals partly because they're so overcrowded in these mass production facilities to try to keep them well, but partly, though, to add weight. And I've talked to these ranchers. I mean, there's ranchers in my family. And I had a guy come see me, and he heard all this, and he said, Doc, I just feel bad. I mean, I put those implants in the ear because we'll get another 100 pounds in that cow, and we'll get more money. So, I mean, this is happening, antibiotics and hormones both. But that and it's a low dose. I had a farmer here, the other day, said, hey, I got to test my stuff, and it can't be above a certain level. And yeah, there's a level. But that low-dose exposure all the time, like in the milk, I was drinking 3 big glasses of milk every day. I was eating plenty of meat. So we're getting this low-level exposure all the time. That kills the probiotics. Chlorinated water kills probiotics. Chlorine that we put in the swimming pool. Why? Kill bugs. Same thing in your drinking water. It'll kill your gut flora. Birth control pills kill gut flora. Splenda, the artificial sweetener, kills 50% of your gut bacteria. Artificial sweeteners are of the devil, in my opinion. And there's so much research that explains this. I'm not going to get into all the detrimental effects of artificial sweeteners, but if it says diet or sugar-free, run away. I'd rather you have the real Dr. Pepper. But really not even that. But the point is, for right now, Splenda, 50% of your gut bacteria is compromised. GMO, genetically modified food. That food they alter the DNA of this food, or of this plant, in order to spray it with Roundup. Roundup Ready cotton. No problem. Roundup Ready cotton, all the weeds come, you spray the field with Roundup, so you kill all the weeds, so you get better yields on your cotton. That was the theory, that this would work well for everybody. A lot of these weeds are getting resistant to Roundup now. But here's the problem. Monsanto said Roundup's okay. We can spray it on corn and other food because Roundup, the chemical pathway that Roundup blocks, I'll never remember this, the shikimate pathway. The shikimate pathway doesn't exist in human physiology. The chemical pathway Roundup blocks doesn't exist in the human body. And they're right, it doesn't. Therefore, you can spray it on food and we can eat it. However, that pathway, that chemical pathway, exists in every probiotic in your gut, every microbe, these beneficial guys in your gut, they're killed by this Roundup. And the Roundup usage since 1970 has skyrocketed. In fact, the EPA came out a couple months ago and said the new safe level for Roundup is 40 parts per million. They raised it to 40 parts per million. There's a doctor, he's in Germany, Kruger. A study came out this summer that said he documented 3 different species of probiotic are killed when you put in 1/10 of 1 part per million. It kills those guys. And we just raised the level to 40 parts per million. So the point is, this food, if it's not organic, it's sprayed with. An uncle called the other day. This a few months ago. He was driving to Slayton. There's some sunflowers out in the field, and it looked like they had just been sprayed and defoliated or whatever they were doing. And he called me and said, "Look, these sunflowers are so vibrant the other day, and now it looks like did they really spray them? Is that what we eat? Sunflower oil and sunflower seeds?" And well, yeah, that's what you eat. You're eating this food. It kills the gut flora. It's a big, big deal. Okay, so why am I going into this so much? Same thing with the stomach acid. We've got to ask ourselves, what do these guys do? Okay, yeah, I see that we're killing them off, or maybe we're not even starting with them, but what's the big deal? Well, here's the big deal. They do lots of stuff. One thing, going back to digestion, nutrients. To get this food, it's not you are what you eat, it's you are what you can digest and absorb into your bloodstream. You can eat organic food all day long, but if you don't have stomach acid, and therefore you don't have gallbladder enzymes coming in and pancreatic enzymes coming in, and if you don't have the guys here, you're not absorbing the food. These bacteria in the gut make enzymes that break down your food. There's certain enzymes these guys make that you can't make. Your human physiology, human DNA doesn't have the instructions and the know-how of how to make certain enzymes. We are 100% dependent on these guys, these good bacteria, to make some of these enzymes. Okay? So that's huge. And you know, people think, oh, magnesium, zinc, copper, selenium, B12, these vitamins, you really need them. What's the big deal? There's thousands of chemical reactions going on in every cell of your body, all 10 trillion cells of your body, every second. And they're all dependent upon all these different vitamins and minerals for all these chemical pathways. Okay? I give this example of my wife. When we were first married, this was, 13 years ago. I was in med school in Houston. She's from Turkey, Texas, little tiny small town farm girl. She moves to Houston, doesn't know a soul. And I'm in the hospital all the time. It was my third year of med school, so you're in the hospital all the time. I was on call every third night, spend the night at the hospital. So she's lonely. She's getting a little depressed. She doesn't know a single soul. She doesn't have her animals down there. There's no trees. There's concrete and smog. So she's getting depressed. I call her mom because her birthday's coming up. I call her mom and said, "Hey, what's her favorite cake? I'm going to make her a cake for her birthday." And her mom said, "It's red velvet." And I said, "Okay. Well, give me the recipe because I've never made a red velvet." And so she gave me the recipe. I went to my pantry in our little apartment there in Houston, opened it up, pulled out the ingredients that she gave me, started making that cake. Well, it called for 4 bottles of red food coloring. I only had 1 in my pantry. And I thought, that'll work. And I proceeded to make the cake. And the end product was defective. It came out real light pink. Instead of that deep dark red, it was real light pink. Plus, it was real crumbly and mushy and all messed up in other ways because I did something else wrong, obviously. But the point is, the recipe called for 4. I only had 1. I went ahead and made the cake. It was defective. When you have to build a new cell, these 10 trillion cells, you weren't born with these same 10 trillion cells that you have today. These cells die all the time. Your gut lining, every 4 days, die. You make a new gut lining. Red blood cells last about 90 days. They die. You make a new one. Brain cells, 6 months. You're constantly making a whole new you. You can regenerate a whole new you, basically within a year. Your bones take a little longer. Okay, so how does your body know how to make a new eyeball cell, a new brain cell, new hamstring cell, new heart cell? It goes to your recipe book, the DNA. Your DNA has the instructions on how to make this, and your DNA tells your body, hey, I need this much zinc, this much B12, this much copper, this much whatever. It goes to your pantry, the liver. If you're deficient, it's still going to make an eyeball cell, but it's going to be a defective one, and you won't see as good, or your brain won't work as good, or your muscles and all cartilage. And you'll go to your doctor with a symptom, and he'll give you a label and a drug. And it can be just that right there, nutrients from this whole pathway I'm giving. And probiotics are a big, big deal to help get these nutrients into you. Another job that they have is neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters is a big scientific word, but what it means is brain chemistry, your brain hormones. Okay? Serotonin, you may have heard about. Serotonin's a big one. That's Dr. Scratch there, so nobody can read that. 70% of your serotonin is made in the gut. these probiotics are in one of a primary pathway in that production line is the probiotics. So in the old days, when a patient came to me with depression or anxiety, I would say, okay, Prozac, Lexapro, Wellbutrin, blah, blah, blah. Because those drugs, they're serotonin pills. They raise your serotonin up. And they can benefit you because they raise the serotonin up. And they can be detrimental because they do lots of other things. But nowadays, I don't do that. I go straight to the gut. And I say, what's going on in the gut? Because I know 70%, God gave us our own pharmacy. 70% of our serotonin's right there. We don't have to do a man-made artificial way to raise it. Let's get the gut back. That leads me to this next book, Gut and Psychology Syndrome. If you have depression, ADD, ADHD, autism, schizophrenia, bipolar, any psychological diagnosis, Google Dr. McBride, Natasha Campbell McBride. Gut and Psychology Syndrome. And these books will be up here afterwards. Dr. McBride's an MD in London, and she reverses to a high degree, if not all the way, those disease, quote-unquote diseases, those labels that I just mentioned. Because there's a huge gut-brain connection, and this is one of them, the serotonin. Melatonin, that everybody thinks about their sleep hormone, melatonin, when they're not sleeping. 80% of your melatonin made in the gut. Dopamine in the gut. There are more nerves in your gut than anywhere else in your body except for your brain. When you're an embryo being made here, your nervous tissue split. Half of it went up top, central nervous system, your brain and spinal cord. The other half went to the gut, the enteric nervous system. In med school, we learned it as the second brain of the human body. There's more neurological signals sent from your gut brain to your brain up here than is sent from the brain to the gut. More neurological information going that way. The book is amazing. You'll see how that connection, she gives more detail we won't get into tonight of that gut-brain connection. Perlmutter, grain-brain, same thing. The gut-brain connection, huge. Another function of the probiotics, immune system. 80% of your immune system resides right here inside the wall of that intestine. It's called the GALT, gastro-associated lymphatic tissue, gastric-associated lymphatic tissue, 80%. So when someone has chronic infections all the time, sinus, catch a cold every time the kids come over, I catch everything that comes into town. In the old days, I wouldn't know what to do, but now straight to the gut, straight to the gut, straight to the gut. 80% of your immune system there. What's wrong with your gut? Why are you getting these infections all the time? These probiotics talk to your white blood cells. Hormonally, chemically, there's a two-way street there between your immune system and those probiotics. There's one in particular, Bacteroides fragilis. It's one species of these probiotics. It talks to, and when I say talks to, I'm talking about at the cellular level. That's a cell membrane, the nucleus, the DNA. 25,000 genes in your DNA. But on the cell membrane, you've got what we call receptors. These are just, think of them as keyholes. They're different shaped proteins. And these are for your hormones like thyroid, vitamin D, which is actually a hormone, not a vitamin. All your hormones, all the different nutrients. But there are receptors for chemicals that these bacteria make. Bacteroides fragilis secretes a chemical that hooks into its receptor that triggers a signal down to your DNA that controls one of your genes called the T regulatory gene. T regulatory gene regulates a T cell. A T cell is part of your immune system. Your immune system is very, very powerful. It can kill you in 10 seconds. The sad story about the boy in Corpus Christi, football player, junior high kid, died at the football game. He's in the huddle. An ant bit him. He had anaphylactic shock and he died. That's the immune system. Someone allergic to bees sting and you die. That immune system is so powerful. If it dumps all its chemical warfare right on you right away, uncontrolled, you can die from that. So the immune system has to be regulated, has to be reined in and controlled. T regulatory gene is part of that regulation of the T cell. Well, guess what? Patients that don't have much of that bacteria, Bacteroides fragilis, don't regulate that T cell activity, that signal's not there, They're prone to autoimmune, MS in particular. They did a study with mice, took out the Bacteroides flagellaris, MS. Put the Bacteroides flagellaris back, no MS. Autism, same thing. Take the Bacteroides flagellaris out, autism symptoms come, put it back in, autism symptoms go away. That's just one bacteria out of 10,000. There's another one that controls the hormone that tells you you're full. Quit eating. If you don't have that one, you don't produce that hormone, you're going to keep eating. Again, there's a rat study of they had twin rats, so same genes. One of them, they took out that bacteria, those fed them the same diet, those rats got obese. They put that bacteria back in, they came back down the same as their twin. It's amazing. And this is literally every week some new discovery of some bacteria doing something to control us. When we did the Human Genome Project in the late 90s, early 2000s, we finished it up. The point of that project was to study our DNA, this 25,000 genes I mentioned. We thought we were going to have 125,000 because we're such a highly functioning species compared to earthworms and stuff. And it turns out we didn't have 125,000. But the most interesting thing during that study, we were pulling DNA, blood samples, out of young, healthy people with no diseases, looking under the microscope at that DNA, and we saw that 90% of that DNA was not human DNA. 90% of your DNA that's floating around in you is not human DNA. It's not alien DNA. It's bacteria, viruses, protozoan, amoeba, parasite, all these critters, fungus. These critters are in us and on us all the time, and most of them right there in the gut. And that's how we get such a vast array of these highly functioning different things going on, because we have 150% more genetic information that's bacterial than us. And guess what? This is called a microbiome, all these bacteria, this ecosystem out here. Your individual microbiome, totally different than your neighbor's. Just as unique as a fingerprint. The guys that are in your gut, totally unique as far as the percentage and composition of that. So it's an amazing, amazing new science that's coming out. But anyways, this is why there's such a connection between the gut and your health, because there is so much function going on. Immune system function, neurologic function, digestive function, nutrient, all this stuff. It's incredible. That's why we go to the gut with every single patient we see. Whether you're coming for cancer or diabetes or lupus or rheumatoid or chronic allergies and sinus or eczema, whatever it is, we go straight to your gut, and that's why we go to your gut. One other thing that's important for you to understand about the gut, and then we'll wrap it up tonight. But this is huge. Huge, huge, huge. There's these other bugs, 90% of your DNA is not you. All these other critters are in your gut. And remember I talked about the stomach acid. You got to have it to try to keep these guys under control. And really, that's your immune system's job. Your immune system just monitoring the environment. We need these guys. We need 90% of these. In fact, in your gut, we need 85% good guys to 15% bad guys. That's a healthy ratio. If you get it too much, 100% good guys, no bad guys, no parasites, no fungus, it's bad. You're not as healthy. If you get it 50-50, same thing, not as good. We need these bad guys. And your immune system just sits there like the Homeland Security Department and just monitors that border and watches for a big group of terrorists to come across. Your immune system's watching for just a big overgrowth, and when it sees it, boom, turns on, sends out all its immune system cells and chemicals to fight these guys, get them back in population. E. coli. Women, if you had a bladder infection, if your doctor cultures that, 90%, 9 out of 10, it's E. coli. Well, E. coli's in all of us tonight, right now. In me and y'all, everybody's got E. coli in us. But you're not having urinary frequency and burning and pain and blood and all that. You don't have symptoms of a bladder infection. It's because it's in population, it's in check, it's in balance with everything else. But when it starts to overgrow a lot, your immune system sees it, turns on, and there you get all your symptoms. So all these infections we treat, they're really overgrowths. They're not true infections. Staph and strep live on our skin all the time. All these ear, nose, and throat type infections, those are overgrowths. A true infection is a bacteria that's not normally found in us or on us. Gets in, like a dog bites you, dog bacteria gets in, that's a true infection. But anyways, back to this. We're full of these guys. We need them. However, if they get out of balance, that's a big problem. We already established that most of us, if not all of us, including myself, have compromised our good probiotics that are covering that wall of the colon. So if you wipe out your covering, and then you're feeding the standard American diet into your body, a pound of sugar every 4 days, plus you throw in the grains that we already talked about turn into sugar faster than sugar in your blood, you're feeding one species in particular, yeast. Candida, you may have heard of, maybe not. I never really had, except a little bit in med school. Yeast live off sugar. They will overgrow like crazy when there's lots of sugar, especially if there's an opportunity to overgrow. Opportunity is when you wipe out the good guys. You've got open fertile ground, these guys move in because there's an opportunity for them to move in. Then you feed them fertilizer, they overgrow like crazy. These guys are traveling. They don't stay in your colon. When there's a high population of them, they get absorbed into the bloodstream, just like your nutrients get absorbed. And I said it goes straight up to your pantry, your liver. Your portal vein, the main vein in your gut, everything's absorbed to the portal vein. Portal vein dumps straight to the liver. Everything goes to the liver first. Your liver is where you store, it's where the human body stores extra sugar. If you have any extra sugar. Every American I know of that I've seen in my clinic has extra sugar. The yeast just found the storage vault for sugar in the human body. They multiply like crazy all through the liver. All of your blood gets pumped through the liver every 3 minutes. Every drop of blood from your head to your toe makes its way through that liver every 3 minutes. Just like the air that got through blowing through that right there. If there's a mold in that air filter, all that mold's coming in. We're breathing it all day. Same thing, you're washing your blood through a filter full of yeast. That yeast travels throughout your body. And it's looking for a place to set up shop. And it likes to go where the immune system has a hard time getting at it. A favorite place to go is a joint. Where two bones meet is a joint. The yeast will go inside the synovial cells. Synovial cells line your joints. They secrete synovial fluid, the lubrication of the joint. It'll go inside the synovial cell. The prostate loves to go there. Sinuses loves to go there. The skin, it'll go under your skin. Coronary artery, it'll go on the wall of the coronary. The nerve cells that you have in your brain are lined with myelin. Myelin's like the insulation around that electrical cord over there. You have insulation around your nerve cells. That's called myelin. It'll go inside there. It'll go anywhere. But these are some of the favorite places to go. Okay, well, what's that mean? Well, remember your Homeland Security Department I was talking about, your immune system. Your immune system just sitting there monitoring that 90% critter, 10% you. It's monitoring all that. It sees an overgrowth in the colon, in the liver, and wherever else it goes, it turns on. It calls out the troops, the Marines, the Navy SEALs, all the different departments of your Homeland Security Department, your B cell, T cell, natural killers, your macrophages, all these cells, those are immune system cells. They get turned on to fight. They secrete their chemical warfare, histamines, leukotrienes, cytokines, all these different chemicals get thrown out to fight wherever it needs to fight. What this is, what I'm describing here, inflammation. Go home tonight. That's take-home lesson number 3 for tonight. Go home tonight and Google the word inflammation and your disease or your label. Heart disease, heart attacks, stroke, Alzheimer's, diabetes, autism, allergies, lupus, rheumatoid, whatever, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, whatever it is. Go home and put your disease plus that word together, and you'll see a major connection. Every Western disease. That's what, way back in the early 1900s, that's what Weston Price was figuring out. The connection between every Western disease, it's inflammation. Harvard came out even, their cardiologists there, the top guys there said, coronary artery disease is not a disease of high cholesterol, it's a disease of inflammation. Alzheimer's, it's a disease of inflammation. This is out there now in the literature, but okay, let's take that further upstream. We know, if you're keeping up with the medical literature, you know which, by the way, I read this the other day. The average study, it's called a transformational study. When a big study comes out of a journal, a medical journal, that's going to transform the way your doctor practices and treats you, it takes 17 years for that information that just came out in the journal today to get to your doctor to where he actually changes the way he practices. He doesn't have time. These guys are out there busting their tails like I was, cranking through 40 a day because we have to make ends meet. They don't have time to learn all this and read all this. This has been the hardest year of my life, trying to learn all this and grow a practice, all this, because it's all new and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I was going back to school again. It's very, very difficult. They don't have time. 17 years is what it takes. But we need to take this upstream. So a lot of people are starting to understand there's inflammation. You can read Scientific American, Time Magazine even had an article about inflammation. But where's inflammation come from? That's when no one's going far enough up. It comes from the immune system. I mean, we know this. Well, what turns on an immune system? Your immune system's not going to randomly turn on. It turns on if there's overgrowth of a germ. If someone coughs influenza virus into my nose tonight, my immune system's going to see that huge population of influenza is going to turn on, and all this is going to come, and all that's going to come, and I'll get achy and fever and snotty and swollen and headache, and all that's the inflammatory response. That's the immune system's response to that flu bug that invaded. Okay, so the immune system's being turned on by a germ or a toxin. Heavy metals are a huge toxin. I didn't totally understand until recently when I went to a conference. Dr. Gary Gordon, the doctor of detox, the father of chelation, awesome integrative doctor, told me, Ben, you're missing it if you're not looking for heavy metals. Go home, start checking. So I did. This was in August, started checking, or July. I've probably checked 80 patients since then for their heavy metals. There's not been a single patient yet who's had a normal heavy metal test. That's mercury from amalgam fillings, that's lead from everywhere, that's arsenic from China, that's uranium from Japan, Fukushima. But these things are in the environment, they're in us. But toxins will turn it on, germs will turn it on. Also burns and trauma. But if you're not on fire and you didn't just have a car wreck, then it's a toxin or it's a germ that's in you doing this. Okay, back to here, your joints. If it's in the joint, that is coming to your joint. Pain, stiffness, swelling. If your yeast is in your sinuses, that response is coming to your sinuses. Chronic sinusitis, chronic. These guys that have it, you give them a shot of Kenalog, a Z-Pak, whatever, and they get better, and then they're back in your office in 2 months, 3 months. That's chronic. By the book, in med school, we learned don't give these guys a Z-Pak, don't give them antibiotics. We're not supposed to if you're chronic, because it doesn't work. It leads to more resistance. But we do because we feel bad, and you took a day off work, and you're sick, and you're missing work, and you're paying a copay, and we feel bad, and we give you a Z-Pak. But anyways, John Hopkins took 100 of these guys with chronic sinusitis because there's no cure. They wanted to study them. They went into the sinuses, scraped, biopsied, looked, studied real hard. 96% of these guys, what they found was not bacteria, it was yeast, fungus in the sinus, creating chronic sinusitis. The average person had 3 different species of fungus in their sinus. Altogether, the whole group had 100 different varieties of fungus. That's how, remember the guy with chronic prostatitis, Jayton Cowboy I was telling you about? Antibiotic. I'd give him a ton of antibiotics. So did urology. What were we doing? We were knocking the bacteria off that prostate a little bit because there can be a mixture, bacterial and fungal. We were knocking that bacteria off. That's why the Z-Pak works a little bit in sinus for a few weeks, but then you're right back. We knocked that layer of bacteria off, but we didn't get at the yeast that was underlying it. He kept coming back, reinfected. You take care of the yeast, no problem. That whole inflammation turns off. He hasn't had a prostate infection in over a year because he tackled his yeast. He had, I don't know how many in the year that I was treating him. It was a yeast issue. Chronic prostatitis, chronic sinusitis, chronic dermatitis. The lady with the itchy skin, yeast. It was all yeast. She was better in a matter of weeks after I'd spent months, and so had an allergist, 2 dermatologists, and some internist. It was yeast. I had a lady, she came to see me for diabetes or something. She was wearing a long dress. She was elderly, so I didn't have her lift her dress up to do a full exam of her skin, and she didn't tell me about this rash on her stomach, so I didn't know about it. Anyway, she came back for follow-up. It was like 3 months later, And she said, oh, and she'd lost weight and her sugar was down, all that. But she said, by the way, doc, I'd had this rash on my stomach for like 30 years. Her girls, who are grown now, used to tell her back in high school, Mom, what's that on your stomach? She'd had this rash for 30 years. It went away. I had a guy come see me for his prostate cancer, and he didn't really mention his elbows and the psoriasis. I don't know how I missed that, because usually I'll ask about that. But he said to it, his follow-up, by the way, yeah, my PSA's down and blah, blah, blah's better. And by the way, my psoriasis is cleared up too. And that's the great thing about when you get the body in order, you identify the root cause, everything clears. There's no way to cure diabetes without curing everything else. But anyways, the skin is big. Coronary artery disease, I already said, Harvard even said it's a disease of inflammation. Dr. I forget his name, Houston, I think, Mark Houston, Vanderbilt, great integrative cardiologist. He talks all about how inflammation's at the root of coronary disease. If you have a blockage in your heart artery, you'll get an angiogram done on you, and they'll shoot that dye in you, and it'll be that little, a blockage, and they'll say 80% blockage right there. But 2 centimeters upstream and 2 centimeters downstream, it's wide open. It's just that lesion right there. And we put a bypass, we'll put a vessel to bypass just that one blockage. Why is there just one blockage right there? Why isn't that whole pipe uniformly corroded, like a hard water pipe, gets narrow all the way up and down that pipe? It's because that inflammatory response came just right there and started fighting, laying down fibrinogen and plaque, and inflamed cholesterol is the problem, not cholesterol, inflamed cholesterol. And platelets and all that got laid down as a response to something in that wall. I read a study the other day, I think it was 65% of build-up plaque, atherosclerosis in these heart attack victims they identified bacteria from root canal teeth. Because at the base of a root canal tooth, that's dead tissue space. There's no blood supply, there's no nerve supply, and they filled it in, so there's no oxygen there. Anaerobic bacteria live there. That bacteria can get in the bloodstream. There's a doctor in India, reversed 28, I believe, out of 28 Parkinson's patients. Reversed by getting dental bacteria that was in their brain out. But anyways, dental bacteria can be there, fungus can be there. Dr. Gundry, it's another good book to look into. Gundry, pretty famous cardiovascular surgeon out in California, traditionally trained, done tons of stents and bypasses. But now, he'll do an angiogram on you, and if he sees 80% blockage and you're stable, he won't stent you. He'll say, hey, do my diet, and in 3 months we'll do another angiogram. You'll go from 80 to 40, 40 to 0. There's a doctor at Cleveland Clinic that had produced the same evidence, wrote the same paper. He reverses coronary artery disease. It goes away. I never learned that. I learned you manage this. Cholesterol med, blood pressure med, manage it. Put a stent in it. You'll need another stent in 5 to 10 years. Statistics will tell you, blah, blah, blah. You manage it. No, you can reverse it. Dr. Wall, W-A-H-L. She had MS. MS is when you demyelinate a nerve. If you have MS-type symptoms, your doctor does an MRI, and it comes back and says, white matter lesions of demyelination. Demyelination is the myelin is disappearing. It's being destroyed. Your immune system's taking it out. So that insulation around that cord's being stripped, and you'll have MS symptoms. That was Dr. Wall. She was in a wheelchair. She could barely talk. She couldn't feed herself. Now she's up on stage running around like me, crazy talk. She reversed her MS, and she has no symptoms anymore because she identified what was in the myelin, the germ or the toxin, got rid of it. Because here's what we're taught in med school, is these autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis attacks the synovial lining of your joint. MS, you're attacking your myelin. Whatever autoimmune disease, the theory, I stress, that we're taught in med school is the immune system just going berserk. Out of control, going berserk, doesn't recognize you as you, and so it starts killing its own self. After 35 years of recognizing your myelin as you wake up one morning, your immune system says, I don't recognize that myelin, let's kill it. And they bring all this inflammatory response, boom, to the myelin, and there you go, you have MS. So if this is just some random thing, your immune system, and this comes out of that theory of evolution, in my opinion, because that's we're all in higher education. We're taught this, college and med school. We're evolving from pond scum to a higher species over millions and billions of years, and we're just not fully evolved yet. So, some people, their immune systems are just genetically, they're weird, and they attack themselves. Okay, that's one theory. And with that theory, all you can do is come up here with big-time drugs and put drugs here that shut that immune system down. In fact, most drugs, not just autoimmune, but chronic sinus, antihistamines, anti-leukotrienes, that's singular, anti-inflammatories, anti-everything. This is where a lot of drugs work. But the big drugs for rheumatoid arthritis, Phil Mickelson, psoriatic arthritis. I have psoriatic, he has psoriatic arthritis, but he has Enbrel, the drug, so he can play golf. He doesn't have as much pain, stiffness, and swelling when he takes Enbrel. Why is that? Because Enbrel's a big-time drug right here. Shuts that immune system response off big time. And that's why at the end of the commercial it says, don't get the flu shot, can't be around TB, blah, blah, blah. You're prone to all these things. You have no immune system. Well, that's one way to treat it. You're going to feel better if you don't have the war, if you're not fighting this war down here, because you told the troops, go back to the barracks, nothing's going on. So yeah, you'll feel better. And Phil Mickelson can still play golf. But he will never, ever, ever get over that disease. And the drug very well may kill him. Methotrexate is another drug used for these autoimmune diseases. And that drug is responsible for the death of one of my former employees. Her mother died from methotrexate toxicity, low dose, taken the right way. I prescribed it. Her kidneys started shutting down, sent her to the hospital, put her in the ICU. Her kidneys continued to fail, got on dialysis. Her liver started shutting down, then her heart started shutting down. Then her lungs shut down, got on a ventilator. Then her brain started shutting down, then her whole body shut down. Multi-system organ failure secondary to methotrexate toxicity. And that employee would come to me every morning or call me on the phone because she was in the ICU with her mom and I was at the clinic working. Doc, what do we do? Here's her numbers today. Here's what's today, this, and what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And there's nothing you can do. You could support her, put her on the ventilator, give her the IVs, support, but she died. These are big-time drugs. The number 3 leading cause of death in America, that's what I was talking about earlier. That's us. But that's how they work. They shut down that response so you temporarily can have relief. But what's going to happen down the road? You never got to the root cause of what's in your joint. I had a patient, he's an electrician here in Lubbock. He came to see me when I first started learning this stuff because his wife was a hospice nurse of mine down in Post. And she heard, like everybody else, that Doc's learning all this crazy stuff. And she said, hey, can my husband come see you? I'd never seen him. He lived up here in Lubbock. And I said, yeah, I'll see anybody. And she said, he has horrible joint pain. And they're telling him to get on disability and that all he can do is lay on the couch and take his hydrocodone. So he came to see me, and that's what he said. He spent the past 4 or 5 years with worsening and worsening ankle, knee, and hip pain. And this pain was so bad he couldn't work. He could not perform his job as an electrician, and he loved work. He didn't want to be on disability. Some people, that's their goal. That's not his goal. He had 2 young kids. He's a husband. He wanted to live life. He couldn't. He'd been to the orthopedic. He had multiple injections. He'd been to pain management. He'd been to the rheumatologist. The conclusion after all these years was take your hydrocodone, your fentanyl patch, which is like morphine, sit on the couch, and this is your life. He's in his mid-30s. He comes to me with this whole story, and I'm thinking, man, I don't know. I was just learning this stuff. So this is going to be, I don't know if I can help this guy. I mean, he's got severe pain, and he's seen all these doctors. But I went back in his history, and he had all these risk factors for yeast overgrowth. Tons of antibiotic, standard American diet out the wazoo times 10, like 5 Dr. Peppers a day, sugar. I mean, he was feeding the yeast big time. And I told him, this is possible. I drew all this out. Spent an hour with him explaining all this so he could understand it, so he would actually commit and do what I asked him to do. I said, for 30 days, eat veggies, clean meats, nuts, seeds, eggs only, water, tea, coffee only. That means no fruit even, no grains, no sugar at all, zero, zilch, not a none. And I said, and by the way, come back, give me some blood work, because he wasn't fasting that day. I wanted some blood work on him. Well, about 14 days passed, a couple weeks passed, and the blood work, I never saw it come across my desk, so I called him up and said, hey, Chad, what about the blood work? And he said, Doc, I totally forgot, because you won't believe this. After 10 days of doing what you told me to do. And we did a couple other things. We did some probiotics and some vitamin D and some fish oil, but just basic stuff. I said, after 10 days, I woke up one morning, stepped out of bed, took a couple steps before it hit me that, whoa, my ankles, knees, and hips weren't hurting. And I couldn't believe it, so I started hopping up and down to test it, and they still weren't hurting. So I jumped to the ceiling to really test it. They still didn't hurt. He calls his wife on the phone. Honey, you won't believe this. I'm not hurting at all. And she didn't believe it. She came home for lunch, and they went for a walk around the park. He was totally fine. They hadn't done that in years. His kids came home that day from school. They wrestled on the floor. He hadn't done that in years. He was blown away. So was I. I mean, this guy had severe pain to the point of disability on morphine. And that's all it was right there, 100%. And I'm not saying all y'all will turn around in 10 days. No, most people, he's the only guy I probably know that turned around in 10 days. This isn't an easy process for most people. And some people, it's not yeast. I had a lady, 65 years old, owns a big business here in town. Since she was 5 years old, she'd been diagnosed with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. Initially, at 5 years old, 60 years ago, they called her sour stomach or nervous stomach or something. Same symptoms all these years, and now she has a diagnosis of IBS. Going back in her history, she grew up on a ranch in Garza County drinking water out of a cistern. And she had some other stuff in her history. I thought it was yeast, told her the same thing. Cut all the sugar for 30 days, do a couple of these supplements that you're deficient in. She called me or came for follow-up in 30 days, 20% better with her IBS symptoms. I mean, a little better, not much. So we had to dig deeper on her. And we did an extensive stool study, which, by the way, your normal doctor's stool study, your normal clinic, they're not that good. We do a specialized DNA stool study that looks for the DNA of different bugs in your stool. But she had 2 parasites, an amoeba, still some fungus left, and another bacteria. So there were other germs besides yeast, but there were other germs driving that inflammatory process. And once we eradicated that, and it was very difficult, it took her 6 months, and it was very, very tough, and she had some detox reactions. She almost quit, and it was probably the hardest time in her life. But she got through it, and she eradicated what was driving inflammation. She got it out of her, and her body healed. She has no IBS for the first time in 60 years. She goes back to her primary care physician for her annual checkup the other day. He draws blood on her. Her cholesterol's perfect. She's off Lipitor. She used to be on it, and she's off it now. And her cholesterol numbers are better now than they ever were. Blood pressure's normal, off her medicine. Her skin cleared up to the point her girlfriends were saying, hey, what are you putting on your skin? She wasn't putting anything on her skin. It just cleared because it's an external manifestation of internal inflammation. Skin cleared. She lost weight. She could fit into outfits she hadn't been in years. Again, the point is the whole body. I wasn't trying to clear her skin and wasn't really chasing the cholesterol and blood pressure. When you truly get to the root of what's driving this, everything clears up. It's awesome. It is awesome. I'm 100% firmly convinced more than ever, just like that doctor way back when 2 years ago told me, there's no such thing as disease, there's consequences. If you weren't born with it, it's curable. I'm 100% a believer because I've seen it happen over and over and over. I've only been doing this almost 2 years now, and I could write a book already. And I'm scratching the surface, I think. These guys have been doing it 25 years. It's amazing what's out there. There's a conference, I missed it, but the Academy of Comprehensive Integrative Medicine put it on in Orlando, Curing the Incurable. Amazing conference, if you can ever get to it. And you'll hear more and more stories like this. It is out there. Google functional medicine. There are doctors out there that are doing this, getting to the root of the problem and trying to reverse it. It's really, really incredible. But it takes effort and time, and it can be hard to identify the germ or the toxin in you, and to get it out can be very difficult. These heavy metals can take a year or more to get them out. So this isn't go to this doctor, get a quick fix, I'm better in a week, like we're used to, going to the clinic and get a prescription and go to the pharmacy and feel better tomorrow. No, it's not that at all. And most of what we do requires not much of me, it requires a ton of y'all. And it takes a ton of lifestyle change, you need different recipes, you need coaching on how to cook, you need to know how to shop, you need all this other support. And we have a health coach that can help you do that. I've got nurse practitioners, and we're trying to build a model and introduce it early next year that is just a wellness model to counteract the sick care model that you're in and that everybody's in. Go to the doctor, manage your disease until you die early. That model's a failure, and we're putting all our money into it, and there's no way that thing's going to work. I don't care whether it's Obamacare, Republican care, any kind of care is not going to work when you're chasing, you're trying to medicate and operate yourself out of a problem that you ate yourself into. There's no way you can do that. So anyways, that whole system is a total failure. People are going bankrupt. Businesses are going bankrupt. The number one reason for personal bankruptcy is a major medical illness. It doesn't work. We're dying younger. All these diseases are going through the roof. It doesn't work. It's time to open our eyes, see that it doesn't work, and now you see there's a different option, integrative or functional medicine. But anyways, how our clinic works, I can't take insurance. If I took insurance, I'd have to hire 4 more office staff to deal with the insurance bureaucracy. If I hire 4 more office staff on top of what I have to pay them. They won't do it for free. So to pay them on low reimbursements from insurance, I have to see more people. I've done that. I can do that with the best of them. Guaranteed. I was in the top 90th percentile. I'll toot my own horn again. I know how to crank through them. But that's not what we're doing. So it's a totally different way. Some people are looking for a natural doctor to give you a natural supplement instead of a pharmaceutical. Your blood pressure is high, here, take this herb. Your blood sugar is high, here, take this herb. That's not what we do. We get to the root of why that blood pressure is high, or the blood sugar is high, and the root of why blood sugar gets high, and the root of why you can't lose weight, all this stuff, it's at the cell. I drew a while ago, the nucleus, the DNA, the cell membrane receptors. If you're diabetic, you're making insulin. If you're a type 2, you're making tons of insulin. It's not an insulin problem, a hormone problem. Insulin's a hormone. It's not a hormone problem, it's a hormone receptor problem. That receptor is bent out of shape. So that insulin's having no effect on your cell, and the sugar can't get in. Because when insulin hooks into that receptor, that allows sugar in. It's a receptor problem. Thyroid, we get tons of thyroid patients. They're on thyroid medicine, they still feel bad. Or they're not on thyroid medicine, but they have every thyroid symptom in the book. And they're making thyroid hormone, but same thing, it's not clicking into its receptor. It's keyhole. The keyhole's been out of shape. So a lot of these hormone patients, it's a keyhole problem. That keyhole gets bent out of shape because of the inflammation. So anyways, what we really try to do is really get down to the very root of it. I'm not saying we don't prescribe thyroid. I mean, we do when it's needed. But I think a lot of people, even natural leaning doctors, they're not just going deep enough. Your body's really designed beautifully. If you can get the interference out, get the things out that are blocking it. Mercury from amalgam fillings, 50% of that amalgam is mercury. Mercury binds up that thyroid receptor. You're going to have low thyroid symptoms, but it's not because you don't have thyroid, and it's not because you're not on the right dose of your thyroid. You still have all these symptoms because it's not having its effect inside the cell because it can't hook up with the keyhole. We see this all the time. So we try to get to the very root of it, remove out of your body what's not meant to be there, put back into it what is. Yes, we do supplement. There's some key supplements everyone's deficient in. Vitamin D is a good example. Vitamin D comes from the sun. The sun hits your skin, changes the cholesterol in your skin into D. The D takes 48 hours to soak in. It sits in the oil of your skin because it's fat soluble. 48 hours to soak in. So I'm testing all these oil field workers, farmers and ranchers down in Garza County. They're in the sun all day, every day. Leathery, tan skin. One patient rode his bike in the sun every day with his shirt off, every day for 2 hours. I tested all their vitamin D levels low. Not a single one was normal. I thought, what in the world? Something with the ozone layer, the rays can't get through something. It was the absorption time, 48 hours to absorb that oil in. We're bathing with soap every 24, some of us every 48. But every 24 hours, soap, wash the oil off. That's what I'm talking about. Vitamin D is needed for, of the 25,000 genes I mentioned, 3,000 of those genes can't be expressed. Their jobs can't be performed without vitamin D hooking in. 3,000. Most of those 3,000 have to do with your immune system. It's amazing what vitamin D does. It's incredible. But everybody's deficient. So that's what I'm saying. There's some targeted key things the body needs, God intended for the body to have. We got to get that back in. So go get in the sun enough and don't bathe or supplement. So there are some supplements we do, but that's not our goal, is to load you up with 20 supplements. I had a lady who saw me the other day full of yeast, and she saw a doctor down in Midland who said, you're full of yeast. And she had brought 20 different supplements she was on. And I said, what about your diet? Oh, not really. I don't know if they didn't talk about it. She's just not doing diet. I said, okay. That's like there's a fire burning here and you're using all these supplements like a squirt water gun to put the fire out. With this hand, you're pouring gas on it. You've got to cut the gas off first. She was trying to supplement her way to health. There's no way. You can't supplement your way to health. And this isn't an anti-supplement lecture. We use some key targeted supplements. But in general, if you get the gut back, you get your probiotics back, and you're eating a clean, healthy diet, you can get most of what you need by what you eat. If you're getting the right food from the right food source, that's a whole nother lecture. Our soil's depleted, therefore our food's depleted of minerals and vitamins. So a whole food-based multivitamin, multimineral is a good thing. But these are details we'll get into later. The point is, we're going to try to find the root cause of your inflammation, get rid of it. And the goal is for you to not see us anymore. That's our goal. Come see us. We'll give you a written plan. Go do it. The onus is on you to do it. We'll try to support you. And again, in the new year, we're coming up with a program to do that better, give you all the support and coaching you need to go get healthy, not need a doctor. Everybody's so worried about Medicare, Obamacare, whatever stuff. They come to me and talk to me about this, and I tell them all the same thing. The best way to not have to worry about all that and stress about all that is to not need it. And you don't. Your body is designed to live 90 years, 100 years, whatever, to live as long as God intended for you to live, to fulfill all the things He's got planned for you, great works planned for you before you're even made in your mama's womb. Once you fulfill those works, He's done with you. He calls your spirit home. Your physical shell falls over. You fall asleep in your bed at night and don't wake up the next morning, you're dead. That's how it's supposed to be. That's how it used to be. But nowadays, no, by the time you're 50, you should at least be on 3 meds. By the time you're 65, you need a carrying case for it. These little old 85-year-olds with a bag full of medicines, 15 different medicines. It's craziness. That's what's crazy. Alternative medicine's not crazy. That's crazy. And we're seeing the results of it. It's not working. Anyway, so you can tell I'm a little passionate. But the goal is, and we don't just yank you off all your medicines. That diabetic guy on 9 medicines, he got down to half of one. It's because he would call me and say, Doc, I feel bad. What's your blood sugar? 80. Okay, cut this pill off. I had a lady on 90 units of insulin. Same thing. Her sugar's bottom out. All right, cut it in half. All right, cut it in half again. All right, get off of it. Got off insulin. So we get you off your medicine when it's appropriate to be off of it. But that's our goal. See you, identify this stuff, come up with a plan, give you the plan, implement it, coach you as much as we can. But eventually, you're healthy, you have no symptoms, you're at your right weight, you're disease-free, you're prescription drug-free, and you're out the door, and I don't see you again. That's the goal. Get healthy, get gone. So anyways, we don't take insurance because we can't, because we spend a lot of time with you. But the goal is to not keep having you come back either. And the new visit usually takes an hour and a half or 2 hours. Follow-ups, maybe 30 minutes, and there's usually 3 or 4 follow-ups. Unless you're real hard, there might be 5 or 6. Maybe none, like the guy with the joints. He didn't need a follow-up. But anyways, that's how we do it. I'm booked out for a while. I've trained some nurse practitioners. They're very good, very well qualified. They're in the conventional model just like me, running through like cattle. They saw the problems with that. They've come here. We've trained them. They're excellent. They're good. I had a girl, 26-year-old girl with fibromyalgia. She saw my nurse practitioner because she could get in within 2 weeks with her, and I was booked out for 2 months. Randy did a great job with her, and she came back to do her follow-up, because if you see the nurse prac first, you'll see me at follow-up. I'll still be involved with your care. Anyway, she comes back to me, and her dad came with her because he said, well, I just want to shake your nurse practitioner's hand and give her a hug, because my daughter's been to 12 doctors over 12 years with this fibromyalgia and been on 12 different medicines, and in 30 days, she's 90% symptom-free. So believe me, this isn't about me. Dr. Edwards has all the answers. This is about what I just talked about tonight. Identify these things and help you get rid of them or add in what you need. And that's what my nurse practitioner did for that lady, and she does it all day long for all these patients. And all the nurse practitioners are very, very good, and please utilize them, because I cannot and I won't, I can't, there's no way. I'm a daddy and I'm a teacher. The Latin root of the word doctor is to teach, and that's what I'm called to do, is to teach. Veritas is Latin for truth. To teach truth. So my passion is to go around and get this message to every ear in Lubbock County, West Texas, whoever will listen, to know that there's option 3, because it's just not right for y'all and your families and your churches and your schools and everybody to not understand there's this option 3. Everyone needs to hear this, and then they can pick what they want to do. So that's my passion, and that's what I'm doing and spending more and more time doing. I'm still going to see you. I'm still involved. If the nurse prac has a question, she comes right out and asks me or calls me. I'll get on speakerphone with you in the visit. We'll talk. whatever. My point is, just don't wait around for me to see you, because I get booked out, and it's not about me. Okay? So please, if you need an appointment, we'd love to see you. If you don't, that's fine. Keep coming to the meetings. We've had some repeat people here tonight. That's great. Again, we'll have a new model in the new year with a lot more online support and classes, cooking classes, all kinds of stuff. So just preaching the message of wellness. I'll come and give a talk anywhere. If you have family, friends, church, small group, big group, your mom, that I'll come give a talk. I'm happy to do that. Sign in if you haven't, if you think you want an appointment, because we require all new patients to attend. Then we'll know you attended if you sign in. We do charity care sometimes when we see it's needed. But we've also found when people commit financially, I mean, I've had some people that were not well off, and they went and pawned it all because they were sick and tired of being sick and tired. And when they are financially bought in, they commit. I tell them, you got to get off grain and sugar. There's no way you're going to do it. They do it. I was trying to give away stuff for free. I was way too much, and people weren't committing. They just weren't doing it. So, there's a financial commitment. That lady that took 6 months to get over her IBS, she probably spent over $1,000, all told. All her supplements and all her stuff we had to do for antiparasites, and her healthy food cost more, and her doctor visits, probably $1,000. That's a lot of money. But she's 65 years old and in the best health of her life and doesn't have any prescription drugs, which she told me her copays on all those added up was like $100 a month anyways. But anyways. Questions? I need to quit rambling or we'll go on for 2 more hours.
Is your subject usually different each week?
No, it's the same thing, but in the new year, that's the thing we're going to change. I want to do a 5-week class, a different subject every week for 5 weeks, so we can get in depth into this, because I was blowing and going, just skimming the surface, and, too much information kind of.
So is this going to be every Tuesday the rest of the year?
Yes, except I'm out of town the last, I think, 2 Tuesdays of December. Just call the girls, call the clinic, and.
So the subject matter will be the same next time?
Correct. Yep, pretty much the same subject matter every Tuesday till now, until further notice. It won't be exactly in the new year, but I'm shooting for January and February, starting to do this new model. So, but feel free to call the clinic or get on the website, veritasmedical.com. The cards are in the back with the website, and we'll put updates on there of when the kind of new options will start.
Is there a test for a blood test to see if you got yeast?
Yes, there is. I prefer a stool test, though. It's a little more accurate, but there's blood tests too. But these guys are very, very hard to identify. There's a doctor back in the 1940s who did a great job of aspirating the joint fluid and actually identifying mycoplasma type of fungus in the joint. And he was getting amazing results by giving antifungals. But right at that same time, his colleague discovered prednisone, steroid. Big time, well, I erased it, but a big time drug. And he was giving prednisone, getting amazing results. If you've ever been on prednisone, boy, you will feel good that day. So his colleague said, hey, all these rheumatoid arthritis patients, it's a deficiency of steroid. So let's start giving all this steroid. People are getting these miracle results, but the shoe dropped. Steroids cause lots of problems if you're on them long term. But that was the break point when people started going with these medicines, and this is a steroid deficiency, and they forgot about this guy's research with the joints. So it can be hard to identify these bugs. And in fact, a lot of these bugs, we need them. So like H. pylori is a great example. H. pylori is what's in your stomach. If you have an ulcer in your stomach, 50% of those, you biopsy them H. pylori. So a few years ago, we figured all this out. We thought, oh, H. pylori is the cause of ulcers. Let's kill H. pylori. Everything will be fine. So we did. We give antibiotics, kill H. pylori, and the ulcer heals. What we discovered later, though, these people, a lot of them will end up obese because H. pylori turns on, it secretes a chemical, turns on a gene in your DNA that tells you, quit eating, you're full. So you kill that. You don't have that hormone effect, and you're eating all the time. The point is, we need a little bit of these guys, it appears. We don't need an overgrowth. So you do a test and it says positive. Well, is it an overgrowth or is it the right amount? Do we need to kill it all? It gets pretty complicated. So we get back to the basics. Let's get the right kind of diet that we know feeds the right guys, not the wrong guys. And let's just flood you with good guys, probiotics, fermented foods and stuff. So sometimes we need to identify overgrowers and go after them specifically, and sometimes we don't need to do that specifically. But sometimes we utilize tests like that. But we don't do a ton of testing. Heavy metal testing we do. It's a $60 urine test for your heavy metals. We do that quite a bit. Insurance won't pay for it, but $60, it gives you a lot of information. I have not found one person yet. I'm going to do myself this week so I can present it during the lecture and show you, look, even I had heavy metals. A lot of hormone tests we do, saliva swabs. We find those to be a little more accurate of what your tissue level of hormones is. Blood level is one thing. Tissue level is what we are most interested in.
I heard you lecture in other areas.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Oh, it's, there's no set schedule. I mean, I went to Snyder on a Tuesday night, and I went to somewhere else on it. It's different times, different. Like I'll be in Childress sometime, and Portales in January, probably on a Saturday. So it's always different. But you can just call the office, and I speak for free. I won't take a donation. I won't take anything because I don't want to be influenced by any, or someone claim, oh, he's doing that for money or trying to sell something. I'm not trying to sell anything, but this free thing, the option 3, the idea of this.
Well, I'll just say, I was in Florida for quite a long time and found a holistic doctor there, a master of oriental medicine.
Yep.
And stumbled upon him just because a neighbor thought she was being poisoned and she had cared for my daughter. So I went and did a heavy metal test and found heavy metals in her blood. She didn't have any of the other stuff, but I found him to try to interpret it because I had no idea and regular doctors didn't know.
Yeah.
When I found all this, I've been looking for 9 months for you, and I just accidentally found a girl that had attended your seminar.
Yeah.
That had also gone to this other seminar on smart meters and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad to have found you because West Texas just doesn't.
Yeah, we're just not trained in this stuff. We're not trained in heavy metals. Yeah.
Progressive.
Yep. I mean, they're doing this in Dallas, Austin, Houston. I mean, but West Texas is a little deficient. Eastern New Mexico, and we see patients from all over this area.
My daughter's Girl Scout meeting so I can start coming seriously.
Yeah.
I mean,
Good.
It's so important.
It's a serious deal. These kids are dying early and suffering from diseases out of ignorance. We just don't understand these things. And heavy metals are huge. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I've got that birds thing. Of course, the main reason they say is because I have a hiatal hernia. And so, something you're only supposed to be taking for a few months, I've been taking for years and years and years.
Yep.
And,
Yeah, she's saying for the camera she has hiatal hernia and reflux and taking this medicine for years and years, not getting any better.
and the problem is, too, is I'm constantly having to get esophagus.
Yep. Dilation. Yeah, that acid's coming up your esophagus, creating scar tissue. So, I mean, it's crazy.
So it's just, so you're saying it's just a booster or whatever that's.
Yep.
is closed up.
Yes. Close that valve, the acid will stay where it's supposed to be. Get this book and read it. It will explain a lot of this. What we do in conventional medicine, I'm telling you, we will listen to these symptoms and then we throw a prescription at it. Well, a headache is not from a deficiency of aspirin. Reflux is not from a deficiency of Nexium. If we all needed Lipitor so bad, God would have given us a Lipitor gland. These symptoms, these abnormal lab values, these are warning signs that something's out of whack. It's like your lights going off on your dashboard. Your oil light's going off, your battery light's going off, your low air tire pressure going. That tells you something. So yeah, you could put a piece of duct tape over that and then you don't see it and it's okay. Or you can surgically remove the light bulb. But the truth is, no, you get out, pop the hood and fix what the problem is and the light turns itself off. Same thing. But we're not taught that. We're not taught how to get to the root, unfortunately. And doctors are doing the best they can. These are great guys, great docs. I mean, I'm one of them that's out there, was doing all I knew to do. They're not trained in this. We are trained very narrowly. And if it's not what we were trained, then of course couldn't be, because we're trained with all the knowledge, we think. So we're not very open-minded, but then you're into your busy practice. You don't have time. There's no way any of these guys, even if and I've talked to some of these colleagues, I've had some come. I've seen a doctor here in town and spouses of physicians. They don't have time. They've got a mortgage to pay and a car payment, the kids are in college and blah, blah, blah. And I tell them, I said, don't read this book because it will convict you. And when you write that prescription for Nexium next time, your conscience is going to be telling you you're killing this person. And it's going to weigh on you heavy. So if you're not ready to jump in, don't even start. It's tough.
You're thinking about being Hispanic.
Mm-hmm.
And our food culture is
Yep.
mostly corn.
Yep.
I mean, it's like changing my identity.
Yep. It is. That's why it's so hard. What we do is so hard because you're changing your identity, your culture, what your family, your church or school, what you were grown up with, all this stuff, the culture out there. It's all about go, 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 busy, 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 extracurricular activities. I mean, it's tough. And I tell some people, if you're not ready to really jump in and do the whole full meal deal, just go see the health coach first. Just start slow. It took me 30 days how to figure out breakfast when I got sugar and grain out of my diet, because every day was cereal. And cereal is complete trash to eat. Horrible. I mean, this box right here explains it all. I went to the grocery store one day pretending to be a patient whose doctor just said, hey, your cholesterol's high, eat healthier. And he didn't tell me how to eat healthier because doctors don't have nutrition in med school. I got 1 hour of nutrition in 4 years of med school. Half of that hour was spent scaring me about vitamins. But anyways, I went up and down the aisle and picked the healthiest looking cereal I could find. Oatmeal crisp, just as a innocent patient thinking, oh, that's healthy. Heart healthy, whole grain, blah, blah, blah. That's the healthiest looking thing in the grocery store. Well, I flip it over and read the ingredients. Not the nutrition stuff up top, the ingredients. Whole grain wheat. We already talked about wheat belly, what that does. After whole grain wheat is brown sugar. And then there's sugar, white sugar. Then there's corn syrup, sugar on steroids. Then there's white rice flour, that turns into sugar. And then there's honey. 6 different forms of fungus fertilizer. Plus we're not even getting into the insulin spike you get. When you eat that much sugar that quickly, it spikes your sugar, insulin crashes you, you're hungry in 2 hours. This whole hunger thing, cravings, all that will be eliminated when you flip these switches, kill that yeast, get off sugar, turn into a fat burner instead of a sugar burner. All this stuff we'll get into with you later. In certain patients, the sickest ones, all grains are off limits. They all can drive inflammation. Once you're healthy, then some oats in moderation is fine. Spelt flour, kamut flour, the ancient wheat. We had biscuits this weekend. We made them with kamut flour. I make cake, brownies, pancakes, waffles. I don't do it all the time, but when we do it, it's kamut flour, coconut oil, coconut sugar. The sweeteners that are good, coconut sugar, stevia, and xylitol. The flours that we use a lot, oat flour, kamut flour, coconut or almond flour. I just sent out or my secretary sent out an email tonight to all our patients with 5 different holiday recipes that are good: a healthy pumpkin spice latte, a healthy eggnog, a chocolate cookie that's good and healthy. There's ways around it, but you have to learn them. That's the hard part. And then you go home and your family doesn't know, you got to cook this way for your family. Are they going to eat it? That's a big stressor. Then you go to church and the meal at church is awful. It's one of the worst places to eat. Schools are horrible. I talked to the head of the school lunch program. She told me she was mandated to increase the number of grains she serves those kids. From last year, it was like 7 grains. She's got to get it up to 9 to 10 now, servings a day. No, so the culture does not. Your grocery store, I tell people, shop the perimeter, the produce, the meat, dairy section, shop that perimeter, and then get out. Everything on the interior, like this, if it has a shelf life on it, no good. That's man food, not God food. It used to be God food, but then you sent it to a factory and man perverted it, and now it's man food. Stay out of the middle of that grocery store, except for toilet paper. Run in, get that, and come out. Soft, yes, ma'am.
Is the bread like Ezekiel bread that you can buy from the fridge with the sprouted grain? Is
Yep.
that still made from the bad wheat?
The sprouted grain breads is a question. If that's made from the bad wheat, yes, it's made from the bad wheat, but in the sprouted form, it doesn't have that glycemic load.
Oh.
So it won't spike the sugar as much. So sprouted grains, when you're healthy, in moderation can be okay, like the Ezekiel bread. But again, in someone that's sick, I even hold them off that initially.
How about, you said fermentation, how about
Hominy? Fermented hominy? Any vegetable fermented is okay in my book, and you can ferment any vegetable. Now, people always ask, what about beer? It's fermented. Well, it's not the same exactly. And, mhm.
What's the other book that you have out there? Not that one.
Nutrition and Healing. Nutrition and Physical Degeneration by Weston A. Price is a good one. Why We Get Fat If You're Needing to Lose Weight, this is a good one. Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. And you can come up and look at these afterwards. But Why We Get Fat by Gary Taubes, Taubes. He also has a YouTube video that's excellent. You don't get fat by eating fat. You get fat by not knowing how to burn fat, and that's a hormone issue. That's a hormone receptor issue. You don't get heart attacks from eating fat. But I'm not going to get into that tonight. That's why we're going to expand this to a 5-week class. There's too much to get into, and it's late. So thank you all for coming. I can answer questions individually if we need to. And again, invite your friends, family, neighbors, churches, whoever. I'll come to them.
That's awesome. You know how many internal doctors for my blood pressure
Yeah.
got sold
Yep.
to the pills.
Yep.
They say that's just all we can do. There was never an option 3. That's it.
They don't know about option 3, so invite your doctor to come too. We'll teach it to everybody. Okay, thank y'all. We're going to talk about some of the books that I mentioned in the talk tonight. The first one, Why Stomach Acid is Good for You by Jonathan Wright. It goes into digestive issues and particularly stomach acid and the benefits and the uses and the need for stomach acid. So great book for anybody with reflux, heartburn, indigestion. The other book I mentioned tonight by Weston A. Price, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. Pretty thick, heavy book, lots of research, but he talks about the link between nutrition and the Western diseases that we see that cultures around the world don't see if they're eating their native diet. Really good book. Wheat Belly, probably my favorite one. If you're only going to get one book, probably I'd say this one. Dr. Bill Davis, William Davis, cardiologist up in Wisconsin, explains that the wheat we're eating today is not the same wheat that God made, and that it's driving a lot of this inflammation I talked about tonight. Gut and Psychology Syndrome by Natasha Campbell McBride. There's Dr. McBride there. You see here autism, ADD, ADHD, depression, schizophrenia, any brain diagnosis. You have a kid with ADD or autism, I'd highly recommend the book. She talks about how she reverses those through healing the gut. If you're having trouble losing weight, this is a book of truth about why we get fat. And that's the name of the book by Gary Taubes. You can also look at his lectures on YouTube. But this explains why you get fat. It's not because you're eating fat. It's not about calories in, calories out. It's not about go exercise more and do boot camp. It's a hormone issue. You have hormones that tell you to store fat. You have hormones that tell you to burn fat. This book explains it. Great read. Dr. Gundry's Diet Evolution, cardiovascular surgeon I mentioned in the talk, reverses coronary artery disease through diet. I don't really believe his evolutionary take on things, but the diet is basically the same. Get the grains and sugars out, and you'll get the inflammation down. Good book for thyroid patients. Why do I still have thyroid symptoms when my lab tests say I'm normal? It's a good read for any thyroid patient. If you want to learn more about heavy metals, Dr. Gordon's book, Gary Gordon, Detox with Oral Chelation. He's a godfather of chelation, of heavy metals. Great read. We address heavy metals. We'll address heavy metals in just about every patient because it's an across-the-board issue. I haven't had a patient yet where I've looked at them and they've been clean. Everybody has heavy metals that I've looked at. Cancer, real quick, everyone always asks about cancer. This is an old DVD, Dr. Lorraine Day, D-A-Y. She was a head of orthopedic trauma surgeon at UC San Francisco, got breast cancer, advanced breast cancer, and she cured it without conventional treatments. She did a natural approach. Her protocol's in here. Dr. Gerson, Max Gerson, the Gerson therapy you may have heard of. He was a doctor from Germany who immigrated here during the Second World War. He suffered from migraines. He came up with a nutritional protocol to cure his migraines. And of course the word spread. and a lot of people were using it for their migraines. Well, then it cured a lady's tuberculosis, then it cured a lady's cancer. So he started really researching it and using it for cancer treatments. And I mean, he's dead now. This is back in the 50s. He actually presented to Congress in 1946, July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 1946, to the Subcommittee of Foreign Relations in the United States 79th Congress. So you can go to the Congressional Library and read his testimony, 10 different patients that he brought to Congress about the cured cancer that he did. His daughter, Charlotte Gearson, still alive. She's 90 plus years old. I met her at a cancer conference. She still does a Gearson therapy at a clinic in Mexico, in Tijuana. Another good cancer book, Dr. Nick Gonzalez. He's an oncologist, formerly trained as an MD in oncology, I think at Columbia. He does a nutritional protocol for cancer. He's got documented in the literature 10, 15, 20, 30-year survivors of stage 4 metastatic cancer, incurable, sent home to die on hospice, and he's cured them at least, 20, 30 years still out, still alive with no signs of cancer. I talked to Dr. Gonzalez personally at the conference. I've learned part of his protocol. Great book, great read. There's other resources on our website, veritasmedical.com. Get on there and read around under links on resources, and there's videos and other things we'll be putting up there. So educate yourself. That's our goal, is to help you get educated so you'll know how to allow your body to unleash the miracle cure that's waiting inside.